And now returning to the story of Reah of Tharaland and her pendant. Petrus will remain broken as we didn't get his confession, so we will be pulling what he says from my external brain, the Wiki.s wiki. It's my favourite wiki for Dark Souls and in my opinion is the best of them all. I use them constantly to remind myself of the details scattered about Lordran that has slipped my mind. And now we have seen Priscilla lose her first two children to the darkness, and now she has pulled back to think about the world and contemplate what went wrong. When Reah moves from the catacombs, she moves to the Undead Church and sits in front of the relief that represents Ulyssil. Ulyssil is Priscilla's attempt to solve the problems of Lordran, her own kingdom where there would finally be peace, or else there would be a reckoning. And Priscilla hoped this threat of Armageddon was enough to right the course of the world, force everyone to put aside their differences and finally get along. And at the centre of this world would be her new beloved child, Princess Dusk, the daughter of a scaleless dragon and Menace, the archetypal human.
Hello. I will never forget what you did. I am deeply indebted, for it was not within my power to save Vince or Nico. I cannot thank you enough. In case you have not heard, I am Reah of Tharaland. I only wish there was some way I could help you, but I am inexperienced and I only know the art of miracles. If that could be of any help, speak to me again. Would a miracle be of any help to you? I would be most pleased if that was so. May we discuss miracles then?
Notice Reah believes she could not stop Vince or Nico, though she has the miracle wrath of God. Is this a deception on her behalf, or is she simply ignorant to her powers? If Reah had never thought about participating in battle, it may have never crossed her mind to use the miracle. Reah also holds the divine blessing, holy water from goddess Guinevere. The goddess of sunlight Guinevere, daughter of the great lord of sunlight Gwyn, is cherished by all as the symbol of bounty and fertility.
Vince and Nico were fooled by a lout named Patches and turned into hollows. My prayers did them no good. It is my ignorance, my frailty that has sealed their fates. Perhaps Petrus realized my weakness all along, and thus made the decision to abandon me. I can hardly blame him now.
This is Priscilla contemplating the path that got her to this point, her two children consumed by the dark, and she wonders if it's her failings as a mother that caused their downfall.
Then be safe. Farewell, Reah Nox.
Reah Nox, fear the night. Priscilla now sees only night, as her two children have been taken from her. They are all she cares about, and without them the world has no meaning. And now, as Priscilla contemplates the dream of the kingdom of Ulyssil, Sif the Scaleless plans an assassination of his daughter, the living weapon. Priscilla was the valiant father who was meant to shoulder the curse Sif had decided to shrug off onto another. But the remedy had escaped and become consumed by her own humanity, and now Sif was helpless, being pulled along on a path he did not wish to walk. And so he sent his men after Priscilla, and in another time he may have succeeded, and all that would be left of Priscilla was memories.
Have you seen Milady?
But the Queen Priscilla was beloved by all, a figure of bounty and fertility, and so her knights protected her. And Sif's plan was thwarted, and he was locked away in a place known as the Duke's prison.
By the Lord! You damned fool! Enough of you! Feel the wrath of the gods! No! This can't be. It can't end like this.
The night is a terrifying thing. It is the loss of everything that gives life its meaning. It is to become bewildered in an empty void where there was once a structure and a purpose. The night can be the end of the journey if it becomes too debilitating, where a soul becomes convinced that there is nothing more to the world than that which they have known and lost. But if the strength to continue on can be found, the night can be overcome, and a new dawn emerges for those that endured. The Pendant became the focus of the Dark Souls community for a period, It is an item that is said to have no effect, but people decided it did have a hidden purpose, and so they started the hunt to try and figure out what the pendant did. And they found that the pendant is an item that when dropped will drift from world to world on a journey, and at the end of that journey it will turn into a divine blessing, a symbol of Guinevere, a symbol of bounty and fertility. The Dream Chasers reached the end of their journey, and this is what they had uncovered. The meaning of this discovery was theirs to interpret and to find whatever meaning they wished within it. And that's the thing, there are always more secrets to Dark Souls, like an image of the Capra demon on the side of the watchtower. There are always more things to be found and discovered. Sometimes these discoveries are revelations, sometimes they are small amusements, others grow on you as you ponder them over time. What is the true meaning of the pendant? I can't tell you that, or anything else about the true nature of Dark Souls. All I can do is present you with some interpretations. The rest is up to you. And whether you agree or disagree with the interpretations given within this series, it really doesn't matter, as there is no difference between those two actions. They are the same action. An expression of something far more crucial to you, your own personal view of the world of Lordran, the inhabitants within it, and the actions that they take. And I've decided to leave the opening cutscene in. Just watch it again and see if you can notice any more detail within its design.
In the age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. Nito, the first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts peeled apart their stone scales. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath, the Scaleless, betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark side. Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
The pendant is an item that can be found in 3 ways. It can be chosen at the beginning of the journey. It can be given as a reward for a player versus player covenant in the Darkroot Garden by a silver cat that we will meet later. Or it can be found in front of the altar in the Undead Church if Petrus has time to gather the courage to fix his mistake and murder Reah of Tharaland. The pendant, a simple pendant with no effect. Even so, pleasant memories are crucial to survival on arduous journeys. Notice the visual design of the pendant. It is a stone medallion with the remains of silver paint. The paint has slowly peeled off, revealing the surface underneath. It is held by Reah of Tharaland as she is murdered by a knight who was meant to protect her, Petrus. It is connected symbolically to the story of Priscilla and C. But the pendant could belong to many of the travellers in Lordran, and that is why it is a gift at the beginning of the game. The pendant represents one of the philosophical ideas that underpins the entirety of the Dark Souls series. Lighting the bonfire, praising the sun, being given the day. Le désir de vivre, the desire to live. When we reach Sif's archives at the end of our journey, we will find a library. In the library are books, some of which have covers that can be read. From those covers we learn Sif would like to subscribe to my quarterly newsletter about Dark Souls lore. He also hates paying for game development and so has acquired a royalty-free texture package to use for his books. We also learn he is a fan of a little-known French author named Paul Accar, who died in 1915 in a motor vehicle accident while serving during World War I. Paul Accar wrote several stories, one of which is in Sif's archives, Le désir de vivre, the desire to live. Paul Accar is so unknown that there is only a French version of his Wikipedia page, which only has a few details about his life. And the only people who are discussing the desire to live are other Dark Souls lore fans who have found this book and made the same connection. When I went hunting, I became dismayed that there was no English version of the desire to live. Now I love Dark Souls lore, but I wasn't going to learn French or go through the book with Google Translate open. I had learned from my time as a young kid trying to translate the play Wozak with Babelfish. It's hard and it doesn't get good results. About a few months after finishing Dark Souls 3 and returning to Dark Souls 1, I changed my mind and I went through the book with Google Translate open. And I learned technology has come a long way and the results aren't that bad. The contents of the desire to live are the last of the big elements to be added to my thoughts about Dark Souls. The desire to live contains elements that form the basis for both the philosophical ideas and the visual design that underpin the series, like the Elder Futhark runes or the Norse mythology that we see quite clearly. The desire to live is the story of Mademoiselle Claire, whose family farm has become bankrupt, and so she must leave her home and travel to Paris to work in a department store. Claire has a mother she despises because her mother never gave her any physical or emotional affection. She is also weak and timid, putting up with her life quietly and obediently. Meanwhile, she admires her father, a tyrannical drunk who beats his wife, because he acts freely, and this freedom is something she wants for herself. And so in Paris, Claire embraces the chance to finally know what it's like to live, and more on from that, she learns what it means to desire. The silver ball, rust tarnishing a polished exterior. The pendant, silver paint worn away to the rough stone behind. The progression of the night becoming the day, as the empty void of existence is filled with meaning and purpose. The dawn breaks and life begins. Priscilla loved her children too much to ever harm them in the name of duty, even if others would have done so because her children were her reason to be, and without them she would be banished back to the night. The people of Lordran demanded Priscilla keep the balance of the flame, but this is a selfish demand that they forced upon another so that they could live, and they could desire and covet what they chose. Priscilla was told she must do her duty, and that went wrong when she found her day, her love for an abomination with no place in the world, Velka. Why did Sif panic? Because Priscilla had found something more important than shouldering his curse and the curse of all Lordran. Everyone demanded the day, yet no one wanted to deal with its nature, the destructive power of the light and the dark, and so they demanded Priscilla forego her life so that they could have theirs. And once Priscilla realized the truth of her existence, she rejected the notion, and she demanded something for herself. She demanded a place for her children in a world that turned because of her. When Priscilla did as the people demanded, she was a gentle soul who comforted those in pain. When she rejected their pleas, she was a foul seductress who led them to their dooms. In the end, her children felt stuck with her, despised her, called her names, and diminished her legacy. But is that Priscilla's concern? She did as she wished with her life force. She loved her children, and she gave them life. Maybe this rejection says more about Velka and her inability to take responsibility for her own actions. Maybe it says more about Gwendolyn, who struggled with finding the strength within himself to deal with the pain that comes with living. Priscilla loved her children, that is all I can tell you. That is why she holds them close in the three statues. Velka in the approach from Astora, Gwendolyn above his tomb in the catacombs, and Dusk as part of the relief of Ulasil. The rest is just interpretation. And these ideas are what we find in the story of Mademoiselle Claire and her time in Paris. Claire's story is not Priscilla's story, but there are echoes, just as the pendant could belong to many of the travellers in Lordran. Velka and her love for Manus and his desire to find a place where he finally belongs, and Gwyn, his desire to bring order to the world. Desire is a complex thing and something that will start to become important as we go forward. Desire and its connection to happiness. And this is summed up in the desire to live. Claire is terrible at her job in the department store. She makes mistakes, she believes certain tasks are beneath her, and so the other shop assistants berate her. And this makes her angry, and so she goes and takes that out on the customers. The owner, who becomes infatuated with Claire, decides to watch her one day and declares that the problem is simply she is in the wrong department. So he moves her to the silk department and makes her the head of that department. He gives Claire her own room in the share house out the back. Claire was given everything she'd wanted since she had arrived in Paris. And after this happens, Miss Berth, an older woman and one of the shop assistants, approaches Claire. "Are you happy now, Mademoiselle Claire?" said Miss Berth with a hollow voice. "Yes, yes," I replied, very happy. And the sound of my indifferent words frightened me, as if all of a sudden I saw the ironic fragility and the insignificance of the fever lit in myself, which I had confused with happiness. Later, Claire is talking to a local abbot, and he tells the story of an old woman who would sit in her window and study the church every day. She had happiness, he said, because the happiness resides in ourselves, in the peace of our soul. Ah me, it is not happiness, I said. She had not sacrificed. She had neither desire nor regret. Her heart had not quickened with emotion. Happiness for you is therefore suffering? Happiness is to live. We don't live without suffering. I envy those who suffer because they have lived. And so that is the meaning of the pendant. It is the reminder of why we live and why we suffer. the happiness that comes from purpose as we jump from place to place, growing and changing until we become grossly incandescent. What does all that actually mean? I don't know. All I can do is present you with a bunch of interpretations. And speaking of suffering, it's time to call this episode so we can get started on Sen's Fortress, the focus of the next installment. We will be returning to the desire to live in future episodes as there is much more to that novel. I hope to see you all then. Bye.